Today on the ATL box score, we get into Trump's fast food debacle with the Clemson Tigers. Then we have Ned Kaish on the show to break down all the college basketball action happening this weekend and the past couple of days. We also get his elite 8 of teams that could possibly make a national championship run. This is the ATL Box Score podcast with Alex Berger, and this is Pro Style Wednesday. Now, you guys might be wondering, how does a podcast that just recently started, what do I use for recording space? Well, I actually use a place called Spaces, and I go to the center that's Spaces Midtown East, and I use their resources that they have here to create my podcast and to put it out there to the world and to do other business-related things. And it's pretty much my home base to grow my business and my product that I'm developing for you guys. And if you want to check it out, I have Steve Choi with me, who is one of the regional managers who manages a lot of different centers, also with Spaces and the Regis brand, to tell you more about Spaces Midtown East.
Hey, thanks, Alex, for inviting me on the show. We love having you as well as ATL Box Score with us here at Spaces. I want to invite anybody, all your listeners, to come in and take a test drive. Let us know that Alex sent you. We'll give you a free 5-day test drive to Spaces, which is a hybrid, collaborative, and private workspace location. We're all over the world, particularly here in Atlanta. We have 5 locations, and we'll be opening 2 more soon here. So I am the area manager. Come on in. We offer private offices as well as 8,000 square feet of collaborative space for our members to come in and check it and just be productive. So again, come on in. Let us know that Alex sent you and the ATL Box Score, and we'll go ahead and set you up for 5 days free.
Well, thank you, Steve. Definitely appreciate you. Definitely appreciate your friendly staff for helping me out and giving me all the resources I need to be successful. If you want to know more about Spaces Midtown, they are just a block north from the Fox Theater. I know all you guys know where the Fox Theater is. They're just a block north from the Fox Theater, and I'm going to put the website in the show description, so you have no excuses if you're like me, trying to start your own business or your own brand. Check out Spaces Midtown East. Well, just want to say welcome back, friends, to the ATL Box Score podcast. And this is Atlanta's newest podcast, covering all the faves from the Dogs to Atlanta United, to Tech, Braves, Hawks, Falcons. Any sports team that's relevant in Atlanta, we talk about it right here. Because sometimes, honestly, folks, I have people that ask me, what do you do? I say I host a sports podcast, and they're just like, oh, what sports? So just want to make that really clear to you guys starting off the show. And we appreciate if you're a first-time listener or you're just trying to find something different out there than sports talk radio. Well, you're in the right place, guys, and you can listen to it in a more condensed version, an on-demand version. That's what podcasts bring to the table. I know that I'm probably reaching out to a little bit of a younger audience than a older audience. So however you're listening, we appreciate you listening. If you didn't know, we are on all the major podcast platforms. Just want to put that out there right now. And we are on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher. So if you're listening through Podbeam or through our social media accounts, there's an easier way to listen to this podcast. There's an easier way to find this podcast. Just want to put that out there for you guys. But yeah, the last time we recorded a podcast, not that much has changed here at Spaces. First of all, it's still cold as mess. I feel like we're in the Arctic Circle. I know I'm being a little bit over dramatic, especially if you're from a place like Indiana or Ohio or something like that. Like I know you people that are from there can wear shorts all winter long, but I grew up in the South, and so cold is to me is my limit is what we're at right now at I think 30 degrees. I know it was 30 degrees this morning. I'm looking at my phone right now. No, it's gone up to 44. So 30 is probably my limit. And we're at my limit right now when it comes to cold weather, and I feel like it is the Arctic Circle. Usually winters here are usually in January. It's usually as cold as it is right now, or it feels like mid-May type weather. So, also too here at Spaces, I'm recording in what a place like like to call the dungeon, because literally I'm looking at all four walls, but it's doable, and I'm grateful that I have a place to record my show. So I'm just kind of saying it's kind of like recording in your basement, but we like to call it the dungeon since it's on the second floor. Usually I have better accommodations, but just today I just have to deal with it. I'm not complaining at all. Still grateful for the people at Spaces Midtown who help support this show, and yeah. But still, I was like, coming into work today, I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Because I'm kind of just like, man, like we're going to talk about college basketball. We have Ned Kaish on the show today, and he's our college basketball guy, breaking it all down for us. And you just mentioned a team. You just pick out a team like UCF, for example. Yes, I found out today UCF is actually doing better in college basketball than you would think, because you think that's now a football school with the way they have a fake national championship. But actually, you pull out like a team like UCF, and Ned Kaish can name like their starting five right off the bat, and he can tell you who's good, who's not, and who came out of the state of Georgia. So he has that magnificent talent where he can just pull rosters off the top of his head. It's very fun to listen to if you haven't checked out Ned Kaish or know anything about Ned Kaish. So with that though, I'm just pulling up the AJC and I see Joseph Martinez is signed through 2023. Dang. That's a long time to be committed here. I know a lot of people haven't lived here that long. So, but he does get $1.4 million last season, and I'm trying to figure out, do they list what he's getting now? It doesn't look like it says so, but I'm assuming it's going to be more than 1.4 million. They're kind of, I bet you that it's going to get pumped up to like 2.5 or somewhere around that neighborhood, or at least like 3 point something. I'm just kind of guesstimating off the top of my head. I just saw that article just came through my desk, so I thought I'd mention that. And since for you Atlanta United fans, there's something you can go get now that I talked about Atlanta United. The big story actually that's going on right now in sports, and I'm not a big fan when politics and sports kind of meet in a crossroads. Because one of the reasons why is because I wanted to talk about sports because it's not crucial. It doesn't determine how you're going to shape the world, and it's a nice distraction from life. And it's funny, I'm trying to turn this into my life. But with politics, everyone's super opinionated, and it's kind of like there's no really middle ground. It's just your people come off like they're right all the time, even though it's your opinion. That's all I want to go at it from that. But now politics has kind of got mixed up with sports again. And this is what I'm saying is not a political stand. I'm not backing anybody because I don't want to tell you my voting record. I don't want to get into who I support, who I think. I don't want to even endorse a candidate because I don't want to isolate anyone that listens to this podcast, because I want everyone to listen to it who's interested in Atlanta sports or sports in general. I don't want to isolate anyone with my opinions. But this is the country that we live in, that people do that. They isolate each other with their opinions. I even saw something on Saturday Night Live where they talked about tiny turkey. And they said it was one of these things. It was something, if you've isolated your whole family with your opinions, well, then time to check out tiny turkey. I thought that was pretty hilarious. But now we're at a little bit of a crossroads. And like I said, this isn't a political stance. This isn't a political opinion at all. President of the United States, Donald Trump, had the Clemson Tigers over at the White House. And I'm really surprised, first of all. You had Clemson, who won the national championship a week ago. And you have them at the White House so soon. When Alabama was at the White House, they were there in like May last year. This never really happens, and I know that it's like a lot of teams go visit the White House. This is the kind of typical protocol when you win a national championship or a championship that has national implications. When you win a national championship, when you win your league's championship, and in your particular sport. And so usually this doesn't happen that fast. Usually it's at least like 3 to 4 months before you actually get the go ahead to go to the White House. Maybe it's because of the temporary government shutdown. I hope I politically said that correctly. I might be wrong about that, but I guess it's because of the government shutdown, and it's kind of like, well, we really don't have anything going on. We were pretty freed up here at the White House, so let's bring Clemson while they're still fresh off the national championship, while they haven't started their off-season conditioning. Let's bring them down. Let's bring them here and get to have that honor. So they did that. Instead of the media, and this is just the day and age we live in, instead of the media wasn't focused on how great of Dabo Swinney's speech was, which, if you're interested, go check it out on YouTube. I just looked it up before I got on the air here. But he did a great speech. I mean, great speech. And it was very, very it was very, very moving. I'll just put it that way. But that wasn't the things the media focused on. They more focused on the food that was provided by the president because it was a government shutdown, because of all the workers were furloughed. That's one of those SET words. ACT, yeah. SAT, ACT. Anyways, because of because they had no staff really at the White House. They were just on, I'm assuming, a skeleton crew type of situation. And they really didn't have the resources to host someone like the Clemson Tigers. So what they did was they went out and they got a bunch of fast food. And for a second there, I haven't ate McDonald's for a year. And the way it was presented, honestly, when I saw the pictures on Twitter, it kind of made me hungry for a Big Mac. Even like when I saw it though, I was going home and I'm just like, I need to eat something right now. This is making me a little bit hungry. So the way it was presented was it made me hungry. And usually when I see food like that, if it's presented right, it'll make me hungry. But if it's not presented right, it's just whatever. So he had fast food provided. He had Big Macs, Wendy's. Actually made me more hungry for Wendy's, to be honest, because that was the first thing I saw. And I was like, are those hamburgers? They don't look like hamburgers. They more look like they're wrapped like tacos, but that's here nor there. I've even seen pizza. They had fries and like presidential White House cups. So it's like they brought out the fine china, the sterling silver, but they put it on that sterling silver, and they made it look like it was a gourmet meal for the most part, but it was all fast food. When I think about it, and Trump's kind of boasting that it's, I paid for this whole spread and everything like that. I'm like, okay. Since you had to pay for this whole spread and stuff, and you're pretty much treating this as you wanted to provide food. That's cool and that's great. And since they're college kids, you know that they're not like, you knew it wasn't going to be an insult if you didn't have lobster there or you had caviar or something like that. You knew that you got something that they were into. And by the way, they did have salads there too as well. And I also saw some pizza, which I thought was interesting. It makes me wonder how warm those Big Macs were. I know Big Mac isn't that bad when it's not as warm. At least that's my opinion. Eating Wendy's hamburgers cold, that's kind of disgusting. But if I want to be picky about the spread that was there, since they are a team from the South, and which, by the way, people, Clemson's not that far from where I'm at right now. You just go up 85 and you're it's like the first or second major exit once you get into South Carolina. So they're in the Atlanta market. And in the Atlanta market, Chick-fil-A is really big. So I'm surprised that you didn't see any Chick-fil-A, that they didn't. Whoever put this together with the White House probably didn't do their homework. I'm just saying. Because if you want fast food, you want fast food that these college kids are going to be into, put some Chick-fil-A there. Because I know like the nutrition staff at Clemson was like, oh, good gosh. Like, you want these players like eating this stuff? This is not allowed. I mean, I'm pretty sure that majority of those guys couldn't eat a Big Mac, and maybe unless you're on the defensive line or one of the lines, you probably let that stuff slide every now and then. But I know from a nutritional standpoint, because they make sure these kids eat the right way. That everything they eat is monitored, so to speak. So I know with the nutrition staff there at Clemson, they had to be like, oh my gosh. Like, one of them literally had to turn blue when they saw all that junk. So, my thing is, if I want to be particular about this, where was the Chick-fil-A? That's all I have to say. Where was the Chick-fil-A? Because I know there's Chick-fil-A. There has to be Chick-fil-A's in Washington. There has to be. I'm not saying where's the Zaxby's. I know Zaxby's isn't in Washington. I know that's out of their range. But I know there has to be at least 20 Chick-fil-A's or maybe 30 in the Washington, D.C. area. There has to be a Chick-fil-A close to Washington. There has to be one in the Pentagon Mall there. There has to be a Chick-fil-A. So if I want to be particular, I think there should have been Chick-fil-A. But if I wanted to throw the whole fast food stuff away from that, then I'm thinking, okay, let's not necessarily give these kids fast food. Let's give these kids better burgers, sort of like gourmet burgers, or let's give them a step up. Yeah, it can be that type of food and everything like that if you want burgers and pizza and everything like that. But let's get them really good burgers and really good pizza and really good salads. Let's give them what it says on the iPhone when you look up restaurants. Let's give them like the $3 signs or the $2 signs quality of food. That's all I'm saying. Because I know, Trump, you have the money. And let's not be stingy about this, especially with the media watching. And I'm so surprised, too, that this has got as much media attention as it has. You have Michael Strahan saying that he's going to, on his show, it was either Good Morning America or that new show he has on ABC, that's mid-afternoon. He pretty much said, he's like, hey, I'll host the Clemson Tigers over, and we'll give you a really good meal. We'll give you lobster and all that other jazz. Okay, that's great. But it also makes me wonder, too, what was the parameters if you're fitting the bill as president? But this is probably going to go down in history as the first time there was a huge fast food spread because of the government shutdown, because they didn't have the resources and the workers to put together the state dinner for the Clemson Tigers. It also makes me wonder too, what kind of food is served when a sports team drops by the White House. That also makes me curious a little bit too, if you think about this whole situation. And it looked like from pictures that I've seen that it's like Clemson players were eating it up, literally, that they thought it was awesome that they had all that stuff. But I'm still surprised, no Chick-fil-A. No Chick-fil-A. That kind of surprises me a little bit like that. Because then you would really, I feel like then you'd really sell those kids. Because you know, majority of those kids eat Chick-fil-A on the regular. You know, if majority of those kids had Chick-fil-A for 4 years of college, they'd be eating it every day. Oh, and by the way, too, I thought it was stupid that someone tried to go after Trevor Lawrence. Now Trevor Lawrence is pretty much like the poster child of college football. He just became overnight the poster child of college football. But I thought it was stupid that someone was trying to hack into his thing or make a misquote that he said. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, what he said was pretty much that the White House visit was awesome. Didn't elaborate, didn't go into details. That it was awesome. So, if you haven't, you're still on this fast food thing that Trump did, check out Dabo Swinney's speech. I think that might change your mind a little bit. This is the ATL Box Score podcast with Alex Berger, and in case you're wondering, I am Alex Berger. Appreciate you guys joining us. If you're joining us through iTunes, Google Play, definitely appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. And this is kind of my crazy world of sports and opinions and whatnot. So right now we're going to have Ned Kaish join the show to talk about college basketball and all the fun that's going on in the college basketball scene nowadays. Now we just want to welcome back to the ATL Box Score. We had a lot of fun with him last basketball season, and he still wants to come on the show. We got Mr. Ned Kaish to talk about college basketball.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alex. Good to be back again. Just talking college hoops. I watch entirely too much of it, so it's nice to have a platform for maybe a few people to listen to my thoughts.
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, I don't watch it as nearly as enough as you, so that's why we have you on the show.
Awesome. Well, ready to get into it. I know some people are just kind of converting over to college basketball now that football season's coming to a close. So hopefully we can keep you informed and give you a couple teams to watch, and maybe your team is one of those teams.
Right. Like you got a pretty big matchup this weekend in the ACC with Duke and Virginia. What are your thoughts on that matchup? Because it seems like the ACC's back to bringing big-time games during the regular season outside of Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, the ACC is legit. I think they have 5 in the top 15 this year, and they're really good. Obviously, it's headlined by Duke. Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett are kind of the names to watch. But yeah, they lost on Monday to Syracuse in overtime at home, which was shocking. But they were also playing without, 2 of their studs. Cam Reddish, who had a huge game against Florida State, had the game-winning 3 on Saturday, was out with an illness. And then Trey Jones, who's their kind of everything. Their point guard plays great on-ball defense. Leads. I think he's second in the country in assist-to-turnover ratio. He left that game about 5 minutes in with a separated shoulder, I believe is what they diagnosed it as. So Duke's coming into this game a little bit undermanned. I mean, obviously you're still going to have the number 1 and 2 recruit. If Reddish plays, he's the number 3 recruit. That's a freshman. So I mean, they'll be in a good place. They're playing at home. And they're looking to bounce back. I mean, Duke doesn't lose at home back-to-back very often.
Right.
So I'd expect them to come out and play well. And then Virginia, Virginia's got something to prove this year. Obviously the UMBC loss is what everyone thinks of Virginia as now. But, I mean, they're studs. They're undefeated. They're, limiting teams to 50 points on defense like they always do. But, I mean, man, they can score on offense this year. I mean, Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, and DeAndre Hunter lead them. They shot, I think, 10 of 13 from three-point land in the first half in their win over Virginia Tech last night. So, I mean, I think this Virginia team is arguably the best in the country. They don't have the big names. They don't have a ton of signature wins yet, which I think is why they sit around that 3 or 4 mark. But I really like this Virginia team. It's tough to go against Duke at home, but without Trey Jones, with the way Virginia's playing, I wouldn't be surprised if Virginia was favored in this game, even with it being at Cameron.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the game last night with Virginia Tech and Virginia? That game during the first half was pretty close and went down to the wire, at least. Well, Virginia in the second half just ran away with it.
Yeah, Virginia Tech they're a great team. They were 14-1 coming into the game yesterday, with their only loss, a 1-point loss on the road at Penn State. To see Virginia blow them out. It was Virginia was shooting the ball well early, and Virginia Tech kept hanging around. But once Virginia gets up by 15 or 20 in the style of play where it's so tough to score against them, and they eat so much shot clock and execute their sets so well at the end of the shot clock. I mean, once you get down 10 or 15 to that team, it's really tough to come back. And I think for Duke to have a chance on Saturday, they've got to make sure they're ahead or within striking distance of Virginia the whole time, because once Virginia starts to take the air out of the ball, it's really tough to get back in a game against the Cavs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now I have to ask, does North Carolina have problems, or was Louisville just that good on Saturday?
I haven't really figured out this UNC team. Obviously that game was a total blowout. At home to lose by 16 is absolutely shocking.
Right.
And they're kind of figuring themselves out. They got a good bounce back win at home against Notre Dame last night. But they're a little bit like who was I looking at earlier? I can't remember who it was. One of the teams. Kind of like Kentucky, where they've got a mix of some young guys who are really good. I mean, the freshman Kobe White for UNC has been balling. They've got another freshman, Nasir Little, who's a top 5, top 10 lottery pick. And he hasn't really quite figured out the college game yet. And then you got Luke May, obviously, who everybody seems to know, senior, potential All-American. And it just kind of has it all mixed for them. It seems like when May's playing well, White isn't playing that well, or when White's playing really well, May's off. So, I think there's still plenty of talent on this UNC team. Kenny Williams is a veteran guard they have who shoots the ball well. So I don't think UNC's in trouble. I think Louisville's pretty good. I think Chris Mack is doing a really good job in his first year at Louisville, getting them back, back to where they should be. They're 11-5. They've got some different guys leading them this year. Jordan Nuora is kind of the guy leading them, 17 points a game, 8 rebounds. And then they're just getting some contribution. But Louisville, they're going to be well coached all year. They're going to need a couple of years to kind of get the guys in the program that they want to get back to the level they were when they were competing for national championships.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it has anything to do with the coaching staff and Roy Williams kind of getting up there?
I don't. Roy Williams is in game. He kind of seems to make some decisions that really feel like he's going to lose his team his games. Whether it's using a bunch of timeouts early. We see him at times. If his team goes down 10, he'll just yank out all 5 starters and put in bench players to send a message. And then sometimes by the time the starters get back in, they're down 15 or 20 at that point. So he does some weird stuff, but I mean, I don't think he's anywhere close to kind of falling off his rocker. I think, every team for him is a little bit different. He's never really had the same consistency as, of Coach K, of where his team is top 10, top 15, top 20 every year. I mean, at UNC with Roy Williams, every now and then they have a year where, they're unranked for most of the year and they miss the tournament or they barely make the tournament. And so I think that's just kind of how Roy is. He coaches, different year to year, and sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for his guys to figure it out.
That makes sense. Is there any other teams in the national scene that you need to look out for?
Yeah, so, when I look at the rankings, I think there's probably 8 teams that can win the national championship. Just to kind of list them off real quick. I think it's Duke. I think it's Michigan, Tennessee, Virginia, Gonzaga, Michigan State, Kansas. And then I think kind of the sleeper is Nevada. Out west, they play a lot of late night games. Not a lot of people know about Nevada, think about Nevada. But they're 16-1 or 17-1 now. They won on a buzzer beater last night. They're led by Caleb and Cody Martin, who are senior twins who originally went to NC State and then transferred to Nevada. I think Nevada has something like 4 or 5 starters who are seniors or fifth-year seniors, so they're really veteran. Tennessee is also another really veteran team. Their forwards, Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield, I mean, they're big time for Tennessee. Gonzaga out on the West Coast, again, they've got Hachimura, who was huge in that win against Duke in the Maui Invitational. Michigan State, they've got a couple big men. Nick Ward for them is a stud big man. Kansas, obviously, always dominant in the Big 12. And like I said, I mean, Nevada, I think FSU, Kentucky, UNC, Auburn, Marquette, I think those teams can play. Auburn, I'm sure we've got a fair amount of Auburn fans listening to this one. They've got a ton of talent. They haven't played that well in the last month or so, but they got Jared Harper, can't remember Brown's first name, and Chuma Okeke. Those are all Atlanta area boys who have gone to Auburn and brought them, top 15 success.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting you put Tennessee in that category. I know they're having a good season and everything like that. Why do you think they could have a chance to win the national championship?
I think it's two things, and this is something I think you need to have national championship chance. I think you need experience, and Tennessee has that. 4 of their 5 starters are juniors or seniors, and the one that isn't is a sophomore. They got 2 or 3 seniors coming off the bench. So, I mean, they're an experienced team who's seen a lot of stuff, been in a lot of different moments, played together a lot, which is important. And then Rick Barnes coming over from Texas. I mean, his culture and the way he coaches. I know Texas, they're always looking for more. I mean, just like when they fired Mac Brown in football, they're looking to be the best year in and year out. And that's not always possible at your Texas basketball. And so they got rid of Barnes. And, I mean, just a huge pickup for Tennessee. Rick Barnes has totally changed Tennessee's, the way they're looked upon by the national media.
Do you think when it's all said and done going into the tournament that they could possibly be a 1 seed or a 2 seed?
Yeah, I think if Tennessee can win the SEC, with 2 losses, maybe 3, they could definitely be a 1 seed. But I mean, just we talk about some of those teams. I mean, Kentucky, Auburn. I mean, those are 2 top 15 teams who, if you can knock off those guys once or twice, that those are going to be huge wins when it comes to breaking down seeds in March.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you think if they win like the SEC regular season, because right now Kentucky's going through struggles, to get that 1 seed, and I know this is kind of maybe looking too far ahead right now, but do you think that they would just be good with winning the SEC regular season and not have to win the SEC tournament?
Yeah, they're doing the new. They got rid of the RPI for the tournament. They're using this new net. NET is the analytics they're using for it. I don't really know all that much about it yet, except for that it's supposed to be better than the RPI. But traditionally, if you win your conference, pretty impressively, again, with 2 to 3 losses. Especially if those are road losses to good teams. I mean, the tournament committee looks very favorably upon that. I mean, we love conference tournament times. We get so much basketball, and Cinderellas can fight their way in. But I don't think the committee looks as heavily at the conference tournament for top seeds as much as they might for a bubble team. Because I think for the top seeds, their body of work during the season. Playing at home, playing on the road, that kind of speaks more than a tournament where it's neutral site. You're playing 3 or 4 days in a row. Anything can kind of happen in those scenarios.
Gotcha. Just want to talk about the locals now because they've been doing pretty well with. Even though Georgia lost last night against Kentucky, but you also have Georgia Tech upsetting some people in the ACC and kind of come out of nowhere. But what are your thoughts so far on Georgia State, and Georgia Tech?
Yeah, so just kind of start with Georgia Tech. I mean, you mentioned that win they had. I mean, they demolished Syracuse on Saturday. They beat them by almost 15 points at Syracuse on the road, and then Syracuse turns around and goes and beats Duke, in Durham. So I mean that Syracuse win is almost more impressive Tuesday than it was on Saturday because, you saw that Syracuse was a legit team.
Right.
Before the Syracuse game, they lost to Virginia Tech by 3 in a game that, really Georgia Tech had every right to win. I think they missed 2 layups, right? Right at the bucket in the last minute of the game. They had turnovers in the last couple minutes. It really cost them. It's awesome to see them playing so well. If they win that Virginia Tech game, they're 3-0 in the ACC right now, and Coach Pastor has them going in the right direction. They're totally led by their point guard Jose Alvarado, kid from New York. He does it all. He averages 15 points, 4 assists, 3 or 4 rebounds. And he kind of just does whatever he needs them to do. I think for Tech to have a chance at the tournament, but because I think the way they've played, they could give themselves a chance. I think they need their second and third scorers to really establish themselves, whether it's Alston, whether it's Michael DeVoe, James Banks inside. They just haven't really had a consistent second or third guy to step up and help out Alvarado. Georgia, you mentioned it. Tough game to Kentucky last night. Kentucky played at a really high level. Ashton Hagans, who's actually from Georgia, was committed to Georgia. When Mark Fox got fired, he decommitted and went to Kentucky, and he had a huge game back at home in Georgia last night. But they're getting really, Tom Crean's doing a great job. They've got 2 big men, Nick Claxton, who's been playing out of his mind the last couple games, and Rayshawn Hammonds. They're really good and they're talented, and I think they've taken some really big strides under Coach Crean. But just because Coach Crean knows the game so well. And the other thing with Georgia is Crean's kind of trying to change the style they play. He wants them to get out fast. After a rebound, find your guard, let's run. After a made basket, get the ball inbounds, and let's go run fast. And so I think that's a much different style than what a lot of guys were used to playing with Mark Fox. So, that's going to take a year or two. But, Tom Crean's a great coach, and Georgia's going in the right direction.
Right.
I haven't seen Georgia State play this year, I'll be honest. I could look at their record and make a judgment, but I don't know how informed it would be.
Well, out of the 3, they actually have the best record. I just looked that up, by the way. I didn't know it till I looked it up. So
yeah. Whatever, Alex. You're a huge Georgia State basketball fan. Just admit it.
I like this. I like to see people in the state do well, and
yeah, no, absolutely, and traditionally, Ron Hunter, he's done an awesome job of recruiting the state of Georgia. A lot of the top recruits are choosing to go out of state over Georgia and Georgia Tech. A lot of those middle tier recruits, they're staying in state and they're going to play for Georgia State. And I think a big part of that is just the job Ron Hunter's done coaching that program and taking it to some different heights and just the way they view basketball at Georgia State. They look at it like it is an ACC or SEC level team. They really love their basketball there.
Right. Hopefully they'll get a decent seeding come tournament time, too.
Yep.
At state. My thoughts, though, with Georgia, and then you kind of talked about this, that they had that big win against Tech, and
yep.
And so you thought during that time that it's like there was potential here. They're not going to win all their games, and they're probably going to lose to people that they shouldn't, but they look like a typical team that just got a new head coach.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the inconsistent – I think 2 things really show that. I think, one, the inconsistency that you're talking about where, you go and beat Georgia Tech and then, a week and a half later you lose by almost 50 to Tennessee. And granted, we talked about how good Tennessee is, but there's no reason Tennessee should win 96-50 over another SEC team. So I think that consistency is a factor, but I think at the same time you see, they're close in a lot of games.
Right.
They lost to Temple early in the year by 4 or 5. They played Kentucky close for about a half. They played Arizona State to a 2-point game, a game that they could have won early in the year. So they're getting there. There's still some. They got blown out by Georgia State. Got beat pretty handily by Clemson. So I think when there's a new coach, and especially a coach like Tom Crean who's had success, there's a different level of expectation. And I think when you're a new team week to week, it's hard to always find that level that the coach is looking for. Once you're in the program for 2-3 years, you're used to it every day. It's what, your routine, your habit is. It's much easier to play consistently in every game.
Mm-hmm. So you're pretty much saying don't judge Georgia right now, judge them next year.
Yeah, I think definitely that. And I think, like I said, I think Tom Crean is a fantastic coach. But, I do a lot of broadcasting for high school basketball throughout the state of Georgia, and I've done a lot of big tournaments this year. And Tom Crean, as well as John Pastor, but, they've been at almost every one of these big in-state tournaments. And so I think both these coaches are really trying to put an emphasis on keeping this talent in the state of Georgia, not letting it go to Kentucky like Hagens did or Duke like Wendell Carter did last year. They want these top recruits to go to Georgia, to go to Georgia Tech, and to not really have to think about it, because to know that they're going to go to a good program with a good coach and they're going to have a chance to get to the next level.
Now, talking about Tech, there was a lot of potential, especially Josh Pastner's first year. Last year, he kind of just fell off the face of the earth with his record. And now you're kind of seeing the potential and the reason why Georgia Tech was interested in Josh Pastner. Like, he had good runs at Memphis, but he could never kind of get over the hump. And a part of you wondered, was it the program that he was at, or you really didn't know really what was going on with him at Memphis. And now it's like he gets to Georgia Tech and he has all these unlimited resources, and it seemed like for the first 2 years he didn't do anything with them. But now it looks like Georgia Tech is set up for a decent run right now.
Yeah, when he kind of came from Memphis, and like you said, he had average success, some years good, some years bad. You couldn't really figure out if is he a good recruiter? Is he better at developing talent? He got Okogie, which was an awesome get for them, but and then he really helped Okogie develop, and now Josh Okogie's starting or 6th, 7th man for the Timberwolves. So I think Josh Pastner is a very good coach, both on the court X's and O's and recruiting wise. But obviously, results have to show. If you want to keep your job as a coach, it's all about the results. And so, he's in his 3rd year now. They're, like we said, they're a bucket away from being undefeated in the conference. So I think this is a really big year for him. I think if he can get the 8-8 in the conference, win a game or two in the conference tournament, be kind of in the conversation for NCAA, maybe get in the NIT. I think that's going to go a long way for him. If again they don't reach the postseason this year, I think next year becomes a really big year for Josh Pastner. With that being said, we're 4 games into the SEC or the conference season. So, we'll see what he does. If the guys keep playing this well, I think he's going to be in a good spot come March.
Mm-hmm. What are the teams, though, you listed with your top 8 that you feel like right now could possibly win the national championship? That you mentioned another SEC team in Auburn, which they seem to be, I don't know, just national consensus. They seem to be like the dark horse. But they're beating pretty decent teams and doing it with Georgia talent, like you talked about. So It seemed like last year that they went into the tournament, they lost in the first round, that there were some sort of maturity issues. But this year you're seeing the same results, you're seeing them dominate. But do you think that they're going to get past those issues and that they should fare better in the postseason?
Yeah, you would think year of experience in that kind of moment. First year there, you're kind of just like happy to be here. Like, wow, look at us. We brought Auburn back to the NCAA tournament. How great are we?
Right.
And then I think the next year you're like, all right, well, like we should expect to be here every year. Let's make some noise while we're here.
Right.
So I do think that's the mindset. They've lost 2 of their last 5, and both those games have been on the road. To NC State, who had a tough loss last night, but is a really good team, and then at Mississippi, who again had a tough loss last night, but is also a good team. So I think that's maybe a little bit concerning to, kind of say, we're an older team, we're a veteran team, but we're still struggling on the road in some big games, because that's really where you see who the great teams are, who can go on the road in a tough environment and get a big win against a good team. They've got a chance tonight to go to Texas A&M and do that, and then they play Kentucky at home on Saturday. So this is a really big stretch for Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any doubt in my mind they're a tournament team. Like I said, I mean, their guards, Bryce Brown and Jared Harper, I mean, those guys combined for like 30, 31 points a game. And they've got really good complementary scoring behind that. So I really like the direction Auburn's playing. And like I said, they're not playing great right now, but sometimes at the midseason lull, you come back from the break, you're getting back into classes at the beginning of the semester, and it just takes a week or 2 to kind of readjust to everything.
Yeah.
So that's the other team I really like, and they're number 2 in the nation. They could be number 1, so it's not a surprise. But this Michigan team, they're awesome. I mean, they have very good guards, Jordan Poole and Charles Matthews, are really good, and they have this freshman Iggy Brazdeikis, who's leading the team in scoring with 15 points a game. He kind of came out of nowhere. And Michigan's just they're just picking up wins, and they really do it with a bunch of defense. I mean, they give up like 52 points per game, but they can kind of win any way you need. And at 17-0, that's pretty obvious. And I mean, they haven't played a ton of close games. They played at Northwestern, pretty close, 1 possession game. But I mean, that was it. They blew out Villanova, they blew out North Carolina, they blew out Purdue, they handled Indiana. So this Michigan team is really good this year, I think.
That's interesting. That Michigan's one of those teams that, you really wouldn't think. It's usually Ohio State coming out of like the big Big Ten usually. I mean,
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it is Ohio State. It comes out of there a lot. I mean, Indiana, Iowa, but Michigan. It's funny because they always seem to have some pretty good postseason runs. Whether it's to the Elite Eight or the Final Four, the national championship. A handful of years ago, but they always do it as like a 6 or 7 seed. They kind of haven't had a dominant regular season like this where they're 17-0, and a lot of people argue the best team in the country. I think Michigan and Virginia have been the 2 most dominant teams this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always interesting what happens right now, especially since people are starting to get back into college basketball, that things can change overnight.
Yeah, no doubt. The one thing is, I mean, like we've seen in college basketball, I mean, the one and done, the freshmen, they're legit this year. And I think, there's some teams who are, just a little bit away from those freshmen really figuring out who they are and stepping up and making plays. I mean, Indiana has their guard, Romeo Langford. I mean, he's got the ability to take over a game at any point. And if he can get some complimentary scoring there, he's going to be really good. So I think there's still a lot of basketball to be played. And I think now that you get into conference play and a lot of these freshmen have played 15 games or so at the college level, we're going to start to see some more stars really break out in college basketball.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Does anyone stand out to you in the American Conference? Because it seems like in the American Conference are like the basketball or like the teams that are in there are the teams that seem like are always going to make like the 4th seed or the 5th seed in the tournament.
Yeah. So, I really hate to say this because their football team is kind of in my doghouse because of the national championship they like to claim. But UCF basketball is a really good team. They've got Taco Fall, I think he's a 7'4" or 7'6" big man. And he plays. I mean, he plays really well for being that size. I mean, he averages 10 points and 8 rebounds per game. Aubrey Dawkins is kind of their star guard. He's the son of head coach Johnny Dawkins, who played at Duke, coached with Krzyzewski at Duke, went to Stanford. Now he's at UCF. So they've got a really good coach, and BJ Taylor's a really good guard for them as well. They're 13-2. So I really like UCF in that conference. I mean, Houston's at the top 25 team. They're good. Cincinnati's pretty good. They're always tough. And then Temple. Temple's been pretty good the last couple of years. They haven't really, made a jump in the national scene too much, it seems. But they've got a guard, Shiz Alston. I believe, he's a senior. And he's averaging 20 points a game and 5.5 assists a game. So he really leads them. So, the American Conference is a pretty good basketball conference. I'll keep the comments to myself about football.
Well, I think LSU kind of shut them up in the Fiesta PlayStation.
That was awesome. Yeah, exactly. I think everyone was a LSU fan for about 3.5 hours on that Saturday.
Right. The thing that got me about that thing, it's like, really, there's a bowl named after PlayStation? But that's not here nor there.
I know. All these bowls, they either change the sponsor every year, or they add a sponsor. So it's like the PlayStation, Tostitos, Oreo, Fiesta Bowl.
Well, back to basketball. One of the teams that you didn't mention in that conversation is the Memphis Tigers, and they're having a new head coach in Penny Hardaway. I just want to get your thoughts on Memphis. They've lost a lot of out-of-conference games, but they have 11 wins so far, so they could turn this into a pretty decent season.
Yeah, and I think I've only seen Memphis play, once or twice this year, just kind of, when they're on.
Right.
So, from what they're doing on the court, the 11-6 is really good. And when you look at their losses, I mean, it's at, number 22 LSU. It's at, Texas Tech, who was number 20 at that time, who's in the top 10 now. And then it was against Tennessee. And actually they played Tennessee pretty well. That's always a big rivalry with those two teams. So, I think Penny Hardaway has him going in the right direction. I think he's going to be a case of, and we already saw with him signing, the number one recruit for next year. Let's see who Penny Hardaway gets into, what talent he gets in there the next 2-3 years. Because, as a young player who's a top level recruit who's trying to go to the NBA and learn from the best and figure out how to get there, I mean, Penny Hardaway is about as good as option you're going to get in the college ranks. Obviously you got Kay and Krzyzewski and Williams who've sent out plenty of guys, but there's only a few guys coaching in the college game who've spent meaningful time as a player in the NBA. And I think Penny Hardaway being one of those guys is going to really help Memphis get some high level players. And then it becomes, what can he do with them? If you get the right players and you're kind of seeing Krzyzewski do it. I mean, you don't have to do too much. You just got to put him in the right spots. And I think Hardaway, from his NBA background, he definitely knows that.
Now that we've totally picture brain about what I always like that, it's like I can throw random things at you because this isn't scripted, folks. Like, this is just me and him talking, and like you already know like the top players on like each team, and like I don't know how many teams we've gone through today, but like
I said, I watch entirely too much college basketball. I think on Monday I had 3 TVs going for Big Monday, and all my roommates are like, "Dude, what are you doing? This is college basketball." I'm like, "I know, it's the best time of the year."
Well, you're helping me out a lot. I'm telling you right now, it's paying off. So,
well, you're helping me out by allowing me to just kind of ramble on for 30, 40 minutes every week.
I just want to end the conversation because I'm assuming majority of my listeners are kind of like me, who like sports, but are pretty much always plugged into football.
Yep.
And here, just living here, you always you always know about like the big like football players going to whatever school, big name
Yep.
school. You can fill in the blank there. But it's kind of like with college basketball. You usually know about it if there's a college basketball player here that's making some noise. You usually know about it, or at least for me, I usually know about it when they're juniors or seniors and they're about to leave. So for the people like me that live in this great city, and who are some guys right now, and maybe this is kind of being obvious, but who are some guys right now that are getting a lot of Division One looks at that are out of this state?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you kind of look at some of the top teams in the state, Norcross is always one of the top teams.
Right,
and Norcross has, they've got a ton of talent. Brandon Boston is kind of their big name. And I mean, he's got offers from everywhere. I know he picked up one from Duke a couple weeks ago, Kentucky. I mean, there's tons of guys recruiting him. So Brandon Boston is a big name to keep your eye on. I know Tom Crean was in the gym to see him play a few times. So he's a good player. He plays with a kid named Kyle Sturdivant, who's committed to go play at Southern Cal, who's a really good guard. Buford High School has a big man named Marcus Watson. He's like a 6'6" forward. He's committed to go play at Ohio State.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they've got guys all over. I mean, there's a junior point guard. His last name's his name's Dwan Odom, who plays at St. Francis, and he's committed to go play at Xavier. So, there's a lot of talent all over the state. Wheeler, who I know is always dominant. They've got 3 or 4 guys going to play Division One. So there's a lot of talent in the state of Georgia at the high school level, and kind of as I'm rattling a lot of those names off, very few of those guys are staying in the state of Georgia. So I think that's, again, the importance of Crean and Pashner and Ron Hunter and whoever else, was at Kennesaw State, and Georgia College. I see those guys at a lot of these tournaments. I think college basketball in the state of Georgia needs to put a huge emphasis on, and I know this is kind of a cliche phrase, putting a wall around the state and not letting these top 100 ESPN players, I mean, get out of the state to go to a Southern Cal or to go to an Oklahoma State. I mean, there's no reason you can't get them to stay at Georgia. And if they're going to Auburn, there's no reason you can't get them to stay 2 hours closer to home and go to Georgia. So there's a ton of talent. And I just think if these Georgia college programs can take advantage of what's in the state, like Kirby Smart's been doing, I mean, these are going to be top 25 programs in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Well, thanks, Ned, for being on the show today. Where could we reach you at on social media if we have any questions?
The Twitter handle is at @TheRealNed Kaish. So yeah, come at me there if you got any thoughts on what you said. I try to keep Twitter pretty fun. Throw out some retweets for some college basketball stuff. I'm a big lacrosse fan, so you'll see a lot of that on there. But at @TheRealNed Kaish on Twitter is where to find me. And if you wanna talk some hoops, let me know.
He's pretty active on Saturdays during the winter and going into the spring, or especially if it's a big basketball night. So.
Yeah, and I try to keep my biases down, but especially if it's Duke, it's and luckily they're the number 1 team, so we get to talk about them every week. But that is where my loyalties reside, which is probably partially the reason I love the sport of college basketball.
Right. Well, thanks, Ned, for being on the show today.
Absolutely.
So, guys, this is Pro Style Wednesday. Hope you enjoyed it. Now we're just closing out the show, so I just want to thank Ned Kaish for coming on. Always fun having Ned on, talking some college hoops, and always, I say that a lot, but Ned is actually one of the fun guys I love having on the show, and I'm glad that we could have him back to get us to take us through college basketball and the college basketball season. So you're definitely going to be hearing more from Ned Kaish. Just to let you know, also too, guys, If you liked him when he came on the show, on our first podcast that went live, we're bringing back Bill Bender. So if you like Bill Bender, like what he brought to the table on Football Friday, we're bringing him back on Friday for our Football Friday and get his thoughts of just how college football went this year and to close out 2018 with the college football talk. So definitely glad we're going to have Bill back on the show. So be sure to check that out on Friday's podcast. That'll probably be released later that Friday evening. So this was Pro Style Wednesday. So thanks for listening to us. If you listen to us on a Wednesday or a Thursday or maybe even a Friday, we definitely appreciate you guys checking us out. Hopefully we gave you enough college basketball info to get you through the weekend and the next couple of days. So that's that. This is pretty much our show. And if you're a first-time listener, we definitely need your help, or if you're a consistent listener and never really realize this, but we need your help. Like us wherever you find the ATL Box Score podcast, on social media, on the podcast platforms. That would definitely help us, because that like button goes a long, long way in this internet world that we're in. Also, too, we could definitely appreciate if people could subscribe. If you like what you're hearing and want to hear more about it, definitely subscribe, because on iTunes, Google Play, on our YouTube channel, we've gotten a pretty strong YouTube crowd, especially when we mentioned something about Georgia Tech. So be sure to subscribe wherever you find this podcast, because that would help you out, because now you know when a new episode is getting